Hey guys, Level Cap here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the airplanes in Battlefield 1, specifically focusing on the attack plane. We'll be going over tactics for maximizing your kills with it, how to take out your opposition, and some little tricks along the way. Now, since recording this footage, I've actually hit rank 10 with the pilot, and I have to say that playing with the attack plane on specific game modes is one of the most point-rich ways to play Battlefield 1 at the moment. Granted, playing with a heavy tank or something like that could be equally comparable, but the attack plane is just incredible, and I've had some of my best games when flying in the attack plane most of the round. Now, my first and biggest tip for maximizing your points while flying this aircraft is playing on the operations game mode. There's many benefits to playing on operations. Depending on the map, of course, it can vary a little bit, but some of the biggest benefits are the fact that you will not have any oppositions at certain points during the round, especially aerial opposition. Sometimes the offensive team is the only team with actual planes in the sky, so you don't have to worry about fighters getting on your tail. And then secondly, if you're playing on 64-player operations, this is one of the most clustered game modes that Battlefield offers, which is great for getting lots of infantry kills on every single pass. Now, the variant of this attack plane that I've been using is the default variant. It's called Ground Support. I've tried the other ones out. I don't like them as much. The primary weapon on the Ground Support one is amazing. The bombs are great for taking out infantry, and it even drops spotting flare. So this is the ultimate anti-infantry airplane out there. It can certainly do some damage to heavily armored vehicles, but not a lot. So I'd recommend avoiding heavy armored vehicles unless you see the rest of your team attacking it, in which case you can support it with doing some damage to it. But if you're trying to one-on-one a heavy tank or something, it'll just take you forever to take it down. And it'll probably be able to repair faster than you can deal damage to it. Now, something I switched away from doing early on with my strafing runs is switching to the actual bomber view. There is a bomber view for this plane. You can see where your bombs are going to approximately hit, but it took a little bit too much time to switch to that view. I liked flying from third person mode for the most part, and so just getting a feel for when to drop bombs I found was the most effective. It's not really that hard with this plane specifically because you drop so many bombs and they cluster a big area of the map. You can just kind of get a feel for where to drop those bombs. And when switching to first person mode, you also do have the option of a magnified scope when firing on targets. This can be useful, of course, if targets are really far away or you're trying to be pinpoint accurate. I find this useful for when I'm going after anti-aircraft cannons and I want to be as accurate as possible so that the AA gunner is not alerted by my missed shots before I actually start hitting him. You want your first rounds to be on target when going up against those anti-aircraft cannons, otherwise it could basically mean the end of your flying. And despite anti-aircraft guns getting a small nerf in the latest patch, it doesn't mean that you'll be able to go head-to-head with one if there's a competent gunner. You have to avoid AA cannons whenever possible, and the way to take them out is to basically sneak up on them. Wait until an anti-aircraft cannon is attacking a different target or not looking in your way. You can sneak up on them and take out the gunner, but if you're actually really accurate and you can put some direct shots on the gun itself and then drop some bombs, you can actually blow up the anti-air cannon itself and it will not respawn. So you possess the capability of taking out some of your biggest threats permanently. Now, if you are playing on the operations game mode, your threats are going to change as the map progresses. If you're playing defensively, your biggest threats are going to be the airship when reinforcements comes and offensive anti-aircraft cannons if they don't get destroyed by the time the attacking team takes the point. They can get in the new AA guns and shoot you down, so you have to be a bit aware of that. Also, the attacking team is going to get aircraft, so you have to watch out for that. With the attack plane, I definitely go after bombers, and I'll go after other attack planes as well. If they have a competent tail gunner though, you really have to sort of steer clear or try and lure them into some friendly fire in order to take them down most effectively. The tail gunners on aircraft are incredibly powerful. They're even more powerful than the primary weapons on the airplanes themselves. So getting on the tail of an aircraft can be certain death. You have to be really careful about it. Now, if you yourself have a competent second seat gunner, be sure to spot the enemy aircraft that you're going after, as they can fire at them, but often the front wing will obstruct their view. So spotting the aircraft gives them a nice red spot and they can just fire at that direction the whole time. Having a competent tail gunner will allow you to take out aircraft in front of you and behind you much faster. And that's the only way that I will stay on the tail of an enemy aircraft that does have a tail gunner, is if my tail gunner is also incredibly good and is helping take down that airplane. Now, if there is an enemy on your tail and you don't have a tail gunner and you don't have anybody on the ground that can help you out, then switching to the secondary gunner seat can be a viable option. It doesn't work against everybody, and a good pilot will usually be able to see it coming. However, it does work half of the time that I try it, so taking out enemies on your tail with this technique is not only pretty cool, but it's a very valuable technique if you're not up against, say, an A-class pilot. Now, when it comes to fighting against the airship, the attack plane is again a very effective weapon, provided that you know how to fight the airship. You want to come in and attack the tail gun and the top front gunners. Chances are that most good players out there are not going to be drawn to these gunner positions on the airship, so you often don't get the most competent gunners there. They can take you out and they can deal a lot of damage, but if you come in from a high angle or an angle that they might not be expecting, you can absolutely take out these gunners before they have a firing solution on you. Not to mention, while you take out these gunners, you are farming tickets from the enemy team, reducing their ability to push on to the next sector. You're dealing damage to the airship, and your tail gunner can also deal a significant amount of damage to the airship as well. So this little plane can do a huge amount of damage as long as you're being consistent and doing strafing run after strafing run. Once you've taken out the top gunners, you can also feel free to engage some of the lower compartments of the airship. You can even take out the gunners using your primary weapon there pretty effectively and take out the compartments themselves. You do have to watch out for the lower gunners though, as they can hit you and deal significant damage to your aircraft, but most of the time they're focused on ground targets and you can actually see where they're shooting, so it allows you to go in and hit them. Also, once you understand where to hit the side compartments, you can usually take out those gunners before they even have a shot on you. The attack plane itself is not particularly strong. Speaking from a pilot's perspective, it doesn't take much to disable you or take you down. One of its biggest benefits is that most of the infantry on the ground don't really understand this, and they don't do much to take you out. Snipers are actually very effective against attack planes. Using K-bullets can not only disable engines, but they can inflict a good amount of damage on the aircraft themselves. Hitting the wings or stabilizers of the aircraft with sniper rounds will disable them, even though they might not inflict that much damage. Disabling an aircraft can prevent them from having enough turn to be able to pull out of a steep dive. So I've killed off plenty of attack planes as snipers, just taking out the key components while they're doing strafing runs. Do not be afraid to fire at the attack planes as they're coming by. An entire squad of infantry that decides to focus on an attack plane doing a strafe run, that plane probably won't make it out of that strafe run. So it's just a matter of coordinating as infantry to take it out. As a pilot, you really need to rely on distraction as the main way of keeping fire off of you. Lots of the infantry on the ground cannot focus on you for a long time, or while they're focusing on you, they might get taken out by your teammates on the ground. So if you're taking a lot of fire, fly further away from the action until the fire stops coming your way, do some reps out there, and then come back a little bit later. Chances are the infantry on the ground will have totally forgotten about you, and you can do a strafing run without having to deal with any incoming fire. Now, as you've seen from a number of these strafing runs, I start by firing at infantry with my primary weapon on the way in, and then when I come in to the final point of that strafe, I drop some bombs, get some kills with those bombs usually, but I am also usually dropping flares at the same time. Now, flares not only will spot tons of infantry in this area, allowing players with mortars on your team to get some easy kills, but also giving people assaulting a point a pretty good idea of where the enemy are hiding, but you can also catch people on fire with the flares themselves, and I've gotten plenty of flare kills using the attack plane. It's actually pretty funny. I think I get more flare related damage and kills from the attack plane than I do while playing the recon. Now, occasionally you will get modular damage while you're flying around, which is going to really make it hard to fly or control or aim your plane. You're going to have to get off a full repair cycle in order to fix this aspect of your flying. It's really important to do so, otherwise you're not going to be able to have an effective strafing run the next time around, or you won't be able to bank quite as hard as you normally can, and you really need to be flying at your maximum maneuverability in order to stay alive, especially when you're up against other aircraft. If you can't turn quite as fast because part of your plane is damaged, then you're basically a sitting duck. Now when I'm playing offensively with the attack plane and we get our airship reinforcement, I almost always use that as a big distraction to go in and take out the anti-aircraft guns. You can almost always see the anti-aircraft guns firing back at the airship, so it gives you a good spot as to which anti-aircraft guns are active, and then you can fly in, take out the gunner, and usually take out the anti-aircraft guns themselves, which will keep your airship alive a lot longer. You're actually a very, very effective defender of the airship, and if you have an aircraft on your tail, you can just fly in past the airship, and hopefully the top gunners will back you up as well and take out the aircraft that's on your tail. Now, as for controlling and being accurate with your aircraft, it's one of those things where practice makes perfect, and if you're on PC, there's a few things you can do to improve your maneuverability. I've set basically all of my maneuverability controls to the keyboard, so A and D rolls left and right, W and S pitches up and down, and then I basically have my finesse controls mapped to the mouse. So I can do all of my basic flying with the keyboard on my left hand, and then when I do strafing runs, I can do accurate aiming with my mouse hand, and that seems to work out pretty well for me. There's 1,000 different control schemes out there for flying around. Finding something that works for you is all that really matters. Things that I plan on working on a bit more are using first-person mode when I'm flying away from a strafing run so that I can look behind me, spot targets, and prepare for my next strafing run. That's something that I don't really do too much, mostly because I'm being kind of lazy as a pilot, but it is one thing that I know I can work on and do a bit more of to get better as a pilot. Anyway, I hope this ground support attack plane guide gives you guys some good ideas about getting into flying if you haven't been doing so already, and definitely playing on operations is one of the most fun and effective ways to play this aircraft, simply because of the clustering of the enemies. Without that clustering, it can be a little bit tricky to be as effective on game modes like Conquest. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.